The task force, I'd like to speak a little bit about the evidence and secondly, how we come to the conclusion that Susan Brooks did in fact win the contest. Immediately following the election in 1994, myself and other locally elected officials of the 36th Congressional District formed the ad hoc committee to represent Susan Brooks to go and look into the problems of potential illegal voting in this district. Weeks after the election day count showing Susan Brooks the winner, an 812 vote margin for Jane Harman was certified. Of special curiosity was the phenomena of Susan Brooks capturing all the major cities in the district and still not winning the overall election. Susan Brooks won in Torrance, Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, Lomita, El Segundo, Rancho Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills, Palos Verdes Estates, Avalon, and Rolling Hills Estates. The incumbent, Jane Harman, on the other hand, won in Hermosa Beach, Lawndale, and a few small areas of Los Angeles. It appeared to us as if the dog's tail was wagging the dog. So we began to look more closely into the areas where the percentage of the vote spread took a dramatic change at the final count. We compared the Venice roster books, which were submitted as well as evidence to this committee in, I believe, December of last year or early January. And we found that people had voted without signing their signature on the book. We found people had voted without putting down their address. We found that even the polling officials wrote and documented that they weren't sure why the number of ballots in the box did not match the number of signatures. We do not contest these as illegal votes. We only look at them as an indicator of problems, so we began to audit the vote. What we discovered was a wholesale disregard for California's minimal voting laws that require a voter to declare their proper name and address before being allowed to vote. This is because California doesn't require the ID, of course. These examples, however, created many more questions to us than they ever did answers. On the day before Thanksgiving, we began to literally walk door to door in the areas of highest suspicion and find out what the answers to these questions may be. We never found the answers to the question, gentlemen, because 1 in 4 of the voters in these areas do not reside and are not present at the domicile or residence in question from which they voted. Instead, we found long-term residents who'd never known the voter, vacant or abandoned houses, and commercial addresses where the voter was unknown. Local media such as the Los Angeles Times, KNX News Radio, and LA television stations began reporting on illegal voting in Venice. Every reporter insisted on independently reviewing the evidence, which resulted in numerous articles and stories regarding different cases of illegal voting cast in this election. The largest circulation newspaper in the 36th Congressional District, the Daily Breeze, even wrote an editorial calling for an investigation. On the national level, the Wall Street Journals and Reader's Digest have both independently researched our evidence and wrote stories and editorials which added additional independent information and analysis of the illegal voting which occurred in this election. If I may, I have several examples of this, and this is in the documents that were provided. This is a home in Venice. One of the committee we found, it is a vacant house. Members of this committee, that a person by the name of Cynthia Moore cast a ballot. It has been abandoned since 1991. The owner has never leased to that voter, doesn't know the voter, yet that person still went in, or somebody purporting to be her, and signed the roster and cast a vote in the election. Put that up on the easel.
Mr. Chairman, that may well be a $300,000 home in California.
Well, apropos to the members' comments, we do have high-density housing in California. However, these are post office boxes that people have used as residents, nearly 100 in our district that made the margin of victory for Jane Harman. It's a 3x4 box. They're only about $20 a month, but they are not a domicile, they are not a residence, and we urge the committee not to allow these types of votes to be counted as legal votes in this election.
And sort of pushes the envelope.
Another thing I found, an enormous number of these commercial properties where nobody resided, where votes were cast from. In this instance, I think somebody was using it as a mail drop. In many instances, the proprietor of the business doesn't know who the voter is, never heard of them. There is no record of it. Another commercial building, Mr. Chairman, where somebody has voted from. The manager of the building says in the last 2.5 years that he's been there, he doesn't know the person. That particular office building, this is on Lincoln Boulevard in Venice, where Jane Harman won over 70% of the vote. This gentleman is unknown. to the people who work there, unknown to the manager, and simply not a legal voter in our district. And finally, one of the many post office box residences that people have been using to vote in our district, which is clearly a violation of California state voting laws. Since our initial discoveries, we began from Venice to look in other parts of the district to try and find out what information we had. In each and every case we found is carefully documented in the volume that we had submitted to the committee. I believe staff has it at this time, of 1,490 illegal votes that were cast in our election. I'd like to, if I can, Mr. Chairman, read a few of the cases which were submitted to you previously of this illegal voting. One is the address. In one instance, the neighbor says it's been vacant for at least a year. This is 1217 Cabrillo Avenue. Another is a bed and breakfast hotel. We have youth hostels. We have hotels where somebody maybe stayed there for a week, months before the election, and still cast a ballot in our election. We have one case where there's a Mexican restaurant that was owned by the Vasquez family, and the three sisters living there said they'd never heard of the voter, who has an Anglo name. For 5 years, they have owned that restaurant and operated it. They've never heard of the gentleman. Harman's official margin of victory of 812 votes out of 210,000 cast. We have documented over 1,490 illegal votes from abandoned buildings, drop boxes, like the ones displayed before you, commercial properties, cross-district voters, people coming from out of our area to vote, and phantom voters that nobody can find. Harman's campaign took the unprecedented step of mobilizing dead wood from the rolls, people who chose not to vote in the primary because they were not qualified, and getting them out to vote at their former address. The combination of Harman's attempt to encourage former district residents to vote, along with the clear fraud in Venice, resulted in a flawed election result which contradicts the voting pattern of nearly every other city in this congressional district. Venice was not only the site of heavy legal voting, but the only area in the district, in a small contiguous, about a 1 square mile area, a very high crime area, that Jane Harman won between 70 to 80% of the votes. Now, the margin of victory that we would like to talk a little bit more in detail about the committee is, if you take these illegal votes and you break them down by party registration, even if I allow for all of the Republican illegal votes that we found to be deducted from Susan Brooks and all of the Democrat illegal votes deducted from Jane Harman, you will find that Susan Brooks clearly wins this election contest by 238 votes. If we simply deduct 7 precincts out of 547 precincts, the 7 precincts from which these examples come that are before you, where more than 10% of the votes that were cast are clearly illegal votes, and there were votes that were, the illegal votes were higher in number than the total number of votes that Susan Brooks won in those precincts. If you simply take those precincts, which are displayed here on the bottom, the red vote indicates, or the red bar is the illegal votes, the green are Susan Brooks, and then the yellow for Jane Harman. If you simply eliminate those precincts, those 7 precincts, and throw out the entire precinct, Susan Brooks would win the election by 590 votes. And I think that's really the essence of our argument, and that is, if we simply eliminate these illegal votes, and that's really what the contest is all about, and count the legal votes, then Susan Brooks will win this contest. Like you, I am an elected official, and I must represent the needs of my constituents. That is why I come before you today as a representative of Susan Brooks, to ask that only the legal votes be counted in seating our representative in the United States Congress. Thank you.
They used up less than this. They have 60 minutes. How many days do they have? 105.
All right, so you also have reserved 10 minutes. You'd like to reserve 10 minutes of your time for subsequent use?
Yes, thank you.
All right. At this point, then I would ask representatives for the contestee if they would wish to use an additional 10 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And let me begin by making clear what's really going on here. What we've had is a series of shifting allegations from the contestant. Replying to Congressman Thomas's remarks, what I think is relevant here is not what kind of allegations can be made and thrown up with colored pictures at this hearing. What's relevant is what's in the petition. That's the document that the panel must make a decision on. And neither in its petition nor in the supporting papers do they come close to identifying 1,490 proven illegal votes or even identified alleged illegal votes. And nowhere in the petition do they have any evidence, other than that a lot of those were allegedly registered Democrats, that those people voted for Jane Harman. In addition, there is something very misleading about some of the remarks that have been made in terms of the mailing addresses. As I'm sure the representatives of the contestant know, coming from California, under California law, when you register, one of the things that you can put down is a mailing address that is different than your domicile. And if all they're doing is saying, yes, there were mail boxes that were used as mailing addresses, there is not anything improper under California law about doing that. What they have failed to do is address one of the threshold issues that is a requirement of proceeding further with their petition. And that is to demonstrate, first, that there were more than 812 illegal votes, and second, that those illegal votes were cast for the contestee.